Today, I want to talk about backups. I want to remind you to back up your files as well as share some of the funny stories that happened to me. Well, they may not be very funny, but I will share some of the stories about backups. So let's do that today. So I think the best place to start is to repeat what everyone told you probably a million times, which is back up your files, and number two, your hardware is going to fail. Your computer, your hard drive, everything. Don't think of it if it fails. Think of it when it fails. Everything's going to fail. Your computer, your hard drive, everything in it is going to fail at some point. So this is what you have to get into your head. When it's going to fail, what am I going to do? One mistake people make is thinking, well, I don't have spinning hard drives anymore. I'm using SSD in my computer, so that's going to be fine. That's not going to fail. Well, funny you should say that. I had an interesting experience with SSD when I built my computer many years ago. I had the exact same thought, I'll buy an SSD, it's going to be faster, more reliable, no issues. And then I started having this weird problem, which I thought was related to like a battery on the motherboard or something like that. In old computers, when your battery gets old, it tends to forget about your settings. So same thing was happening on my computer. My boot drive would somehow get reset and became like the last boot drive for whatever reason. And that's been happening a number of times. My computer would crash, I would reboot, and then I would see like, oh, what happened to my hard drive? It's somehow at the end of the list. I had to reset it. And that's what I thought was happening, is I was thinking that my motherboard battery was dying and forgetting different settings. But what was actually happening, it wasn't the battery or the motherboard or any of those issues. It was my SSD dying, and it would have this occasional glitches that would cause computer to reboot or crash, cause like a weird BIOS thing, but by the time I reboot, the SSD is already in the BIOS and it just looks out of order. So I had no reason to suspect it was actually SSD that was an issue. I thought it was something else. And eventually that SSD did die completely, which is how I figured out that's what it was. But luckily, because I don't store anything important on my C drive, I was fine. But just because you're thinking you use an SSD, don't think it's going to last forever. And the next thing we need to address is disconnecting your backups from your computer, from your network. A lot of people say, oh, well, I use RAID system. I have mirroring, I have RAID 5, and that's my backup. That's not your backup, because if something were to happen to your primary drive, if you delete something, well, that same thing happens on your backup drive, right? Because it's a mirror. Or if you have your portable hard drive connected to a computer and you get a virus on your computer or ransomware or something like that, it'll go to that hard drive and encrypt everything there as well. So whenever you have a backup, you need to make sure it's not accessible during normal times. Otherwise, whatever problem happens on your computer could also move onto that backup as well. But here's one more thing you probably did not think of, and that is disconnecting your backup drives from power as well. So whenever you have a portable hard drive or NAS or something you use just for backups, you should disconnect it from the outlet. So it is fully, completely disconnected. Network, USB, power, everything completely removed from any connections. And so here's why. Many years ago, in addition to doing lit support, I also used to do tech support in general, like just go to companies and troubleshoot their computer problems, network problems, printers, whatever that is. And I had this client in industrial area of Brooklyn that I used to visit. They had different machines, right? They had mills and lathes that they would make stuff out of metal. One day the owner of the company called me up, basically crying, like all distresses, like, Nikolai, I need you to come out. I got major problems, everything's out, and I'm trying to find out what happened. He's like, just come out here, I need help, we'll figure this out. So I get to his office and like computers are all opened up, everything torn apart, stuff all over the place. I'm like, what happened? What happened? Dude's just sitting there like holding his head. What he told me is that a lightning struck his building, and the jolt from the lightning traveled through like the power wires, network, and everything, and it just fried random computers. He had some computers where power supplies are fried, some where network cards are fried, some computers that are completely damaged, and others are untouched. So dude was absolutely devastated that this is something that I would never thought that could possibly happen. but it happened to him. He was like the unluckiest guy ever. Of course, this caused huge damage to his business and his equipment and everything. And basically what we had to do is find good computers, good hardware. We put it on like a cart, and he would load the software onto the cart, and then he would wheel it to different, like a lathe or CNC mill, and load the software onto that machine, run the program, then go take the cart to a different place, load the software, and that's what he had to do. He was completely devastated. Tons of equipment got damaged, but that's what it is. And I'm sure you're gonna tell me like, yeah, you have all these power surge protectors and you can connect them and this and that, but yeah, are you really going to trust them? The $20 power strip that's made you don't know where, and you don't know what kind of protection it actually has. So point is, back up your data, disconnect the backup from your network and from the power, and this way it's going to be safe. And if you can have multiple hard drives and rotate them, that's even better. Anyway, your backup strategies, leave them in the comment section below. Don't forget to follow on LinkedIn, subscribe on YouTube, and I will see you in the next video.